if the cool cat was sipping cucumber water, that would make him even cooler, because you got all those cool statements. All right, so that's quite the introduction to the video when people later on are like, what is he talking about? But today, like I said, we're talking about the influence of Islam on Africa, and we're going to see the changes. Today is more of an introduction, kind of looking at how things were in some ways, and tomorrow we're going to come to the completion of this. So here we just see when Islam entered many of these different areas. So we see North Africa is going to be the beginning, and we're going to see that then it moves down east as we start having the development of the Swahili states, which are going to come to being because of all the trade with Arabia and India, creating these huge, awesome, amazing, rich cities. But we're also going to be focusing primarily here for West Africa, because that's where the primary focus of our unit is this year. So let's first talk about the indigenous religions of Africa. Now, this is like, this is a super broad generalization, okay? There are like literally hundreds of indigenous religions that are going to wind up popping up in Africa, and they're all different in different ways, but the majority of them have these certain similarities. So this is some of the similarities between them that is often, but not everyone falls under this. So typically there was a single creator god. When we looked at Kush last year, they had the lion god, which was their creator god, but then a pantheon of lesser gods. And we're going to see that pretty consistently through the indigenous faiths of Africa, which there are some people who still today practice the indigenous religions. That's going to be this, the black with the lines right there. So we see in Ghana, we're going to see in the Côte d'Ivoire, Cameroon, and other places in Central Africa, Democratic Republic of the Congo, places like that. There will still be some people practicing these indigenous religions, but the majority of people have converted to either Islam or Christianity or Hinduism in this island over here, which I think is pretty interesting and neat. Now, one of the other similarities between these faiths is this idea of a respect for ancestors, much like we had when we looked at Chinese indigenous religion last year, this idea of ancestor worship. And the idea that the ancestors, so your past family members that are no longer living, could assist you in life. For example, Rajveer, if he followed indigenous African religion, might be thinking, you know, me getting a good grade on that history exam right before break, that was totally my ancestors giving me a solid because I didn't study for it. Of course, that's not true. Rajveer always studies. The face says it all. But all right. Or, you know, for Iris, she's walking home, and then out of the bush, a lion jumps out, and instead of devouring her, starts licking her face like a puppy happy to see its owner. You know, then she's like, wow, my ancestors had protected me. And so one of the things that they would do often to try to invoke and have these ancestors protecting us is they would go have amulets or charms. And so they would wear this jewelry or hold on to things in their pocket that they believe could help have their ancestors assist them in that. So it's pretty interesting right there. Now, Swahili culture is another thing we need to bring up. We've talked about it a little bit, but Swahili, of course, is a blend of African and Islamic cultures or Muslim culture. And this is basically going to be with the Bantu language going and spreading and mixing with Arabic. But Swahili itself is an Arabic word. It means people of the coast. And it makes sense because that's what the Arab merchants are going to call it, because, like I said, there are going to be 35 really important port cities all along this East Coast where we're going to have tons and tons of trade. And so what's kind of cool is Swahili is both a culture and a language. The dark green here is where Swahili is primarily spoken today, which is pretty cool. One of the things that you might be noticing, though, which is like tough, is, so for example, we see the Congo here, and roughly 60% of it is Swahili speaking, and then the rest is not. Because you might not realize a lot of the political lines that we have in Africa were not made by the actual people living there. They were made by people like the English and the French and the Germans. They just made up these lines. So you have challenges where you have countries where they're divided and things, and that's unfortunately why there's some civil war and things going on with that. So now we're going to be looking, I feel like we're going very fast. Do I need to slow down? Okay, sorry about that. I feel like I'm going on like Mach 11. Maybe it's because I'm really chilly right now. Now, hanging out with Eli too much. Now, so let's look at how Islam is going to change the government. So one of the things that we discussed with our West African culture is traditionally succession was matrilineal. This idea that the royal blood went through the female. So unlike what we're used to of the king's son becoming the next king, this of course would be the king's nephew. It would be the king, the son of the king's sister that would have the royal blood and power sent through. And then of course, when that king had a daughter, then she would have the royal blood and so on and so forth. Now, that is going to change when Islam comes. It's going to start becoming patrilineal. What we're used to, where we have, Mikhail is king, and then, Mikhail's son will be the next king, and then, his grandson, the next king, and so on and so forth. So it becomes what we're accustomed to. I'm not entirely sure why this change happens, because even after Islam comes to West Africa, women are still going to play a prominent role. They'll still have female warriors, they'll still have women in power and having rights. But for some reason, the patrilineal succession becomes the standard after Islam takes into being. Now, another thing that was pretty interesting, and we saw this in Ghana and Mali particularly, we had these empires where we had, the Ghana, the ruler of Ghana. He was a king above lesser kings. We saw that picture and read that primary source where, there's the king and he has all the hostages of the other king's sons so that they listen to him. But basically, under those civilizations, the local people had their own kind of power. They had autonomy, self-rule. So, for example, Mali was part of Ghana, and Mali got to do things that Mali wanted to do just as long as they paid taxes and gave soldiers to Ghana. When Ghana fell and Mali then became the next powerful group, Songhai was even part of Mali. And once again, they had autonomy. They were used to doing their own things. They just had to pay taxes and have self-rule. Well, after we had Muhammad Iskaya Tour go take over Songhai, he starts centralizing power, meaning, the previous emperors of Ghana and Mali, they let their little kingdoms inside of them do what they wanted, whereas he had more direct control over all of the people within the Songhai Empire. So he was calling the shots. He was making the laws that affected the whole thing, as opposed to more making suggestions and having people decide if they wanted to follow it or not. So that's going to be a pretty big change. Another change is a little bit more superficial. Simply that, we talked about how the ruler of Ghana was called Ghana. And, Mansa Musa, Mansa wasn't his first name, Mansa was his title. It was what they used for the term emperor. After we have Islam becoming the dominant religion in West Africa, we're going to see, instead of having titles like Ghana or Mansa or king, emperor, it's going to be things like sultan and emir, which are Islamic terms. We talked about sultan all the way back there where, the term holder of power. I just think that's like the coolest title ever. Anyways, one of the big final changes that we're going to see is laws are going to change. So we had many traditional laws, customary laws, but they're going to be replaced with the Sharia law, which, if you remember from our Middle East unit, Sharia law is Islamic law. So laws found within the Quran and from the preaching and teachings of various emirs and other holy men. And what happens is they start using that as opposed to the traditional ones. One of my favorite laws that went away, and favorite because it's a great story, is things like trial by wood. So trial by wood, this goes, and it's probably good that it goes because it's kind of crazy with it. So let's imagine we have Celeste, and she has a nice, delicious set of cookies in her cookie jar. You like cookies, right, Celeste? We'll take her silence. Oh, yeah, there it goes. She types yes. Celeste likes cookies, and she's excited because she has some of the most delicious cookies awaiting her. Well, she's eating her dinner, and she goes and has her peas and carrots and finishes all of her veggies. And she says, "Can I go to the cookie jar?" Yes, Celeste?
I actually just bought cookies.
Nice. And she's so excited to go to the cookie jar. She opens the cookie jar, reaches her hand in, and there are no cookies left. And of course, she then is upset. And she notices a trail of cookie crumbs. So she follows the trail of cookie crumbs, and she sees there Eli passed out with cookie crumbs all around him. Now, she didn't see Eli eat the cookies, but there seems to be some evidence. So Celeste goes to Queen Nalea and says, "My cookies have been stolen by Eli." Queen Nalea says, "Fine, well, we need to find out the truth. We shall do the trial by wood." So Nalea gets Zione to go out into the forest. And Zione, while out in the forest, finds the grossest, most rotten wood she can find. I'm sure anytime you guys have been in the woods, you might have noticed, like, see one of those logs or trees that it's just totally like rotting and gross and like bugs all over it and fungus on it and things like that. You know what I'm talking about? Well, so Zione goes and finds some gross, terrible, rotten wood. And then she's going to take that back. Like, you know, she goes, takes that wood back, and she goes and puts it in boiling water and makes a delicious and fragrant rotten wood tea. Now you're thinking, where is this going? Well, Queen Nalea says the only way to find out if Eli is guilty or innocent would be for Eli to drink this delicious rotten wood tea. Now, if Eli is innocent, obviously the gods would protect his tummy and he would be able to drink this yucky rotten wood tea and not barf all over the place. But if Eli is guilty, the rotten wood tea will sour his stomach and he will upchuck all of those cookies. And so they got rid of that because they started having regular laws like finding evidence and things like that. Unbelievable, right? If you think that one's kind of crazy, think about wait till you hear about what they did in Europe, like with Christianity, to see if God would say if you're guilty or not. We have some great things, the ordeals. It's awesome. He won't die. He's just gonna barf. I would probably barf. I have a very sensitive. Just even thinking about yucky stuff, I get queasy. Anyways, it is 1:14. Alas, we have only 1 minute remaining. Actually, less than that. So we're not going to have time for the Mr. Nicky song. I am sorry. We'll have to have it mañana. But thank you very much, guys, for being here. I appreciate you. I'm not so sure why so many people were out today. I will miss them. But I hope you have a great rest of your day. Oh, your assignment, by the way, we don't want to forget that, would be for us to work on our Chapter 15, Lesson 2, Africa's Government and Religions. It's super duper short and easy peasy. Yay, Celeste turned on her camera. So nice to see her. And I forgot to stop recording. I stopped now. Woo!